Goodwin. I manage eBusiness Suite development at Oracle, and today I'd like to tell you about our new 12.2.14 release of Oracle eBusiness Suite. So we'll talk a little bit about our overall strategy and release cadence. We'll talk about the organizing principles we had around what to do in 12.2.14 and how to prioritize the work we chose from. We'll talk about some of the key features we've added in each of the product families in ERP and supply chain and HCM, and some things we've done to improve the user experience by integrating additional technologies into eBusiness Suite. I'll tell you about some administrative improvements and then point you to some additional resources. So let's start out with the overall strategy of the eBusiness Suite. 12.2.14 is the latest in an annual series of updates that we've been making now for over 10 years to the 12.2 code line of eBusiness Suite. In addition to those annual updates, since 2018, we've been introducing twice a year an update to our Enterprise Command Center technology that's a subset of the functionality of eBusiness Suite. And the key thing to understand is you can use the very latest Enterprise Command Center release with the earlier 12.2 releases of eBusiness Suite. So if you're on 12.2.9 of eBusiness Suite in general, you can use the 12.2.14 capabilities from Enterprise Command Centers with 12.2.9. You don't have to go all the way up to 12.2.14 to be able to use the latest Enterprise Command Centers that came out. Our support policy has been updated in 2024 to extend support for eBusiness Suite 12.2 and eBusiness Suite as a whole through calendar 2035. That date has been updated once a year, every year for the last 5 years, from originally 2030 out now to 2035. So the idea is not that we're seriously going to end Premier support in 2035. It's that each year we make an update so that we maintain a rolling 10-year commitment to Premier support of eBusiness Suite, so that if we ever did end Premier support, you would have at least a 10-year notice period for that. We picked 10 years because realistically that's beyond anybody's planning horizon. So the main takeaway from this is that you really don't need to worry about the end of support for eBusiness Suite. You should make your plans to do what you need to do with eBusiness Suite based on the merits of that choice and not based on fear of an end of Premier support. So let's talk about the EBS 12.2.14 investments that we made and just talk about kind of what the highlights of what the process we went through to decide what to do. So we focused in 12.2.14, as we do in every release, on what customers are asking for. And we receive that input through several channels. One is that we have an ideas system in My Oracle Support, basically called Support Communities, where users introduce ideas, other users comment on them, users can vote on each other's ideas, and it's kind of an open process to debate and discuss what the important things to do in eBusiness Suite would be. In addition to that, there are times when customers file a service request for seeking a particular behavior change, and that's categorized as an enhancement request because it's not the current behavior or the documented behavior of the system. And sometimes many customers have the same service request. So within the support system, we have input about what some popular service requests are that are actually enhancements to the system. And of course, we interact with many customers at conferences and through other means to get an understanding of what they're looking for in the system as well. So through all of those channels, we come to kind of have a sense of what the highly requested features are across many, many customers. And we try to incorporate those as we can practically each release in the product roadmaps. To make that more concrete in that ideas system, we have at this point almost 9,000 ideas created with tens of thousands of users. And the voting process is actually pretty good at filtering out what are the ideas that a large number of customers really want. It turns out to be a small single-digit percentage of the ideas that ever get votes from 10 or more separate organizations. And if you look at that pool of ideas that get that kind of voting, we've delivered about 40% of those already, the 39%. And overall, we've delivered over almost 900 of the ideas that have been suggested in this system. So the takeaway of this is really that we encourage you to participate in this process because we really are listening to it. We really do take product direction from it. And the voting, really does make a difference in terms of what we wind up putting in the product. Now, this is just a list of some of the enhancements that we put in, and we'll cover some of these later as we go through the different areas. But the key takeaway here is that we made enhancements across really all the different product areas. It's a theme that we have in all areas to focus on what customers have asked for in those particular areas. And that this is also something we've been doing release after release. In fact, in 12.2.14, we probably did more customer-driven enhancements than we did in some of the prior releases. So this is one that's particularly heavy in customer-driven enhancements. So these are high vote-getting enhancements. In addition to that customer voting process, we've actually made an effort thematically to improve the user interface or user experience of eBusiness Suite in two ways. One is to incorporate within the eBusiness Suite system itself some more modern page composition technology called Oracle Jet. That's a JavaScript library that lets us code very interactive behaviors that we might have had to use Java or a Windows desktop type of programming approach for in the past. So we can bring more of those things into HTML. And then for customers doing extensions or building their own content outside of eBusiness Suite, but they want to integrate it to eBusiness Suite, we have improved our integration with some of the tools that people use to develop things on their own. So we'll come back to that and cover that in more detail. But those are the two big ideas of 12.2.14, customer-driven enhancements and user experience improvements. So let's go through the different areas and just give you a sense of some highlights. Not any one customer is probably going to be interested in every single one of these, but I'll try to give them enough context so you can relate to what they are, whether you run that particular product area or not. So let's start off on the ERP side with something in financials. In the prior release, we introduced in the Enterprise Command Center theme a cash management command center that basically helps you reconcile your bank statements and match entries on the bank statements with accounting transactions. What we've added in 12.2.14 is an ability to handle some transactions that really arise on the bank statement itself. Things like how much interest you were paid, or whether you have some bank service charges that occurred on that bank statement. So to help with the reconciliation process of statements that originate on charges that originate on bank statements, we've added some new capabilities in 12.2.14. In the area of leasing, this is actually applicable to just about everybody. Most customers, most organizations lease equipment, lease copiers, you can lease networking equipment, you can lease cars, all sorts of things you might lease. And as of 2019, commercial organizations really worldwide had to comply with the IFRS standard that said you had to take those leases and essentially record the right to use that asset and the obligation to make the payments over the lease term on your balance sheet as an asset and a liability. In the U.S. state and local government area, there's a accounting standard that was adopted, and for those agencies, they had to adopt essentially the same approach in 2021. And now the U.S. federal government has adopted that as an accounting standard approach as well. And so what we've added in 12.2.14 is the support we needed for the U.S. federal government to comply with the new federal version of that same accounting standard. Let's turn to the procurement area, and this is an interesting case. In the services procurement product, we sometimes call this a complex service order. So if you're buying something and you have a payment schedule associated with it, we call that a complex service order. So let's suppose you're buying a turbine or an MRI machine or some other kind of complex piece of equipment where you might make a payment on ordering, a payment when you receive materials, a payment when it's all installed, and then a payment after it's been sort of certified and tested and is ready for production use. So if you have sort of events that trigger these payments modeled in your purchase order, that's going to match your supplier who has those kind of milestone payments modeled in their sales order to sell this to you. So what the purchase order line normally looks like is just a line for that service, and then these payments, the payment schedule associated with that line. But what people want to do is be able to record the value of the materials that are being brought in, because those are being brought into inventory, and for accounting purposes, to account for your inventory correctly, those need to be priced in a way that can be visible to the inventory cost accounting. You also might want to have that material, that information on the purchase order so that you can do historical price comparisons. And if you bought turbine blades for $1,000 each this year, and you can see next year if you have to pay more for them than you paid this year. So there's reasons why you would want to record the value of goods in addition to the overall service line that has the total amount that you have to pay. So what we've introduced is a new, what we call a new cost constraint, basically a new attribute, which lets you declare a goods line to be priced but not invoiced. So that means you can record the price of some of these materials, and we won't create payables invoices for that. And that material can be received and costed for inventory purposes. And of course, you can again refer back to this document then for historical pricing analysis. So that is a feature that people have wanted, and they've had to kind of work around it in kind of odd ways. So now we've delivered that, a very popular enhancement in 12.2.14. In addition, we've done many, many other things in procurement. I won't go through even touching most of these. Just to give you an example of the kind of things, sourcing requisitions from an agreement with a start date after the need by date. The scenario here, for example, is that somebody creates a requisition for a new item, and you realize that you ought to actually enter into a purchase agreement with the supplier for that item. And by the time you finish that purchase agreement, maybe the need by date for that original requisition has passed, but you still want to associate that original requisition in the overall agreement you're reaching with the supplier. And so formerly it was it was hard to do that, and now you can say I want to include a requisition whose need by date is before the start date of the agreement to make it covered by the agreement. So anyway, many other things we've added that are helpful in the procurement area, requested by many customers. In project billing, I'll just give you a quick example here. This is another case where over the course of 12.2, we've added a lot of enhancements around the billing area. The ability to break out bills and send them multiple parties in an organization, or consolidate bills where you're doing multiple projects for the same organization. In the 12.2.10 release, we added the ability to have an agreement, a project agreement, go through an approval workflow. And now we've added in 12.2.14 some additional capabilities to carry attachments for that and record rejection reasons if that comes up. We've also provided more flexibility in all of the attributes that you can capture in an agreement by using our most sophisticated extensible attributes feature called user-defined attributes with these agreements. Another thing in the project and procurement area, in fact, this is really the project that we've been concentrating on in this area now for several years, is building out the capability that's needed by the U.S. federal government, most of which runs EBS financials. Over 100 agencies run EBS financials, and there's a standard called G-invoicing, which deals with how agencies buy services from other agencies. And there's a kind of a common central platform that records these interagency agreements called the G-invoicing platform. And whether you are servicing, meaning you're providing that service, or whether you're requesting, meaning you're buying that service, your procurement system or your basically project system has to interface to this G-invoicing platform to make sure that you're reconciling to the progress and the terms that are represented there, so that everything foots from an audit perspective and like everybody's reporting the same progress on the same project. So we've had this in place now for a couple of years because the federal agencies had to start complying with this as of October of 2022. But there continue to be enhancements that we build for sort of optimization type cases that keep coming up. So what we've added in 12.2.14 is essentially an easy invoicing flow, which the government allows a simplified or more streamlined handling of the flows where small amounts are involved. So under $10,000 or something, you can have an easier time setting all this up. And so we now support that. We've improved our support for seller facilitated orders, which is where the servicing side that actually is going to do the work knows the details of what the order ought to consist of. So rather than having the order start from the person on the agency on the buying side, the servicing side can essentially pre-populate the order from their side. So there's flows associated with essentially the seller originating the order, which is appropriate in the G-invoicing context. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that we've been adding in G-invoicing to serve the federal customer base. Turning to supply chain, in the inventory area and order management area, we have been over a number of releases now improving support for handling internal sales orders. So these are all capabilities that you could always do with an external sales order, like you could return it, you could cancel it, you could partially cancel it, you could cancel partially received lines, you could do all these things with an order that you ship to your customer. But we didn't have all of that support for orders that go between two of your organizations. So if so we've now, as of 12.2.13, we had built out support for all of those flows. The thing we added in 12.2.14 is that in the case of a return, you can now return an internal sales order not to the organization that shipped it, but to a different organization. So let's say your distribution center shipped some materials to one of your retail stores, and that isn't needed anymore there. Somebody canceled the end order or whatever that isn't needed there. Rather than returning it to the distribution center, it could be sort of trans-shipped to a different organization where it is needed. So that's an optimization that customers who are using this asked for. And again, this is an area where there's been a lot of customization. So each of these enhancements we're adding is something that you should investigate. If you have this scenario, you might be able to retire some customizations that you've made to accomplish some of these purposes. In addition to those, there's some additional, many additional enhancements we've done in the order management area. I'll just kind of give you an example. The one at the top left, record customer acceptance through order import. You may be importing orders from some other channel where you captured the orders, and as part of that process, you may have information that there's already customer acceptance of the order that should be recorded in our order system rather than waiting for that to come in through a separate input. And now you can do that through the order import. So you can basically bulk load order information that includes the information that the customers essentially already accepted the order. Now, in the mobile supply chain area, that's an area of logistics where people use a handheld app. You can use an old sort of Telnet gun, or you can use a smartphone app, which people are increasingly doing to do inventory activities like out in the warehouse. And so we've actually added quite a bit of capability to this to make this more robust and to add some additional configuration features that customers have asked for. One thing we've found in dealing with customers who have these warehouse situations is that oftentimes the Wi-Fi coverage is not very uniform within the warehouse. There may be dead zones in the warehouse or places where the connection is likely to be dropped. And we have, because of that and having some customers have issues with that, we have added a whole set of configuration options for how you want dropped sessions to be handled. how long you want to wait before we consider the session dropped in case there's like intermittency and the connection may be recovered, or how you want the reconnect process, how you want that to be tried and so forth. So we now have a very configurable handling of the auto reconnect for dropped Wi-Fi sessions. People often have don't need all the fields that we provide on this interface. And so now we've simplified the process of personalizing this app to let you hide fields that aren't relevant in your business using that directly from the app. You can actually configure the fields that you don't want to look at directly from the app, but before you had to go to a different interface to do that. And the final thing I'll point out is this label alignment. If you look at the picture on the right, we give you an option to have the labels situated above the fields so that you have more horizontal space available to actually show the values if you have long account numbers or long item numbers or whatever it might be, and you just want to make sure that you can show as much data as possible in those fields. You can choose to have the labels right above the fields to make that work better. Another feature of the warehouse is kind of operationally oriented, as we call picking by additional documents. We've had a ability to pick by the sales order, pick by the pick slip, pick by a number of other identifiers for a while now. We added a lot of those in 12.2.10. We've added some more now in 12.2.14 in response to ongoing customer requests. For example, if you're a construction company and you're making custom windows for a particular customer, you might have all of the material for that customer, all the windows and the hardware and everything all on one pallet. And essentially the pallet has an identifier, an LPN or license plate number. It has an identifier. And when you scan that pallet, all the inventory that's on the pallet automatically is marked for picking. Similarly, we can have what we call an allocated LPN, which means that you might go to an area of the warehouse where there's lots of boxes of essentially the same thing, but there's a particular serial number that's been reserved for a particular order, and now the person doing the picking could be directed to that particular serial number. That's called an allocated LPN, and pick the right one for that particular customer. So more flexibility in picking rules and identifying what the picker ought to be choosing. In addition, again, we have lots and lots of other enhancements that we've done, which I can't go through all of. Simple things that just improve the user interface. For example, you can now search in the warehouse management screens for reservations by either customer name or by account. There are many other ways to search. We added those two in 12.2.14. So it gives you a sense of the kinds of things that we're doing in response to customer enhancement requests. In the product hub area, this is a feature that is used when oftentimes when people are doing sort of master data management with eBusiness Suite Product Hub, where there are many systems that may be subscribing to this definitional information about product. Essentially, the bill of materials for the product is being maintained, and changes can be propagated to any subscribing systems. So we built a very nice user interface to help you configure and change and edit bills of materials and manage revisions to those in a Windows interface, an actual desktop product. That is problematic now for many reasons, and so we've got now with our nicer JavaScript technology, the Oracle Jet technology, we have built an alternate to the product workbench, which will replace the Windows system that we've had for many years for this purpose. Similar case in process manufacturing, we had an interface that was actually Oracle Forms based, where we had a Gantt chart, and now we have in HTML, again with this newer HTML interaction technology, the Oracle Jet technology, we're able to build a nice interactive Gantt chart directly in our HTML, so we can provide an HTML alternative to the Workbench and Oracle Forms. In addition, in manufacturing, like in the other areas, we've got a large number of customer requested enhancements. Again, just give you an example. You're doing outside processing, which means that you're generally following your own process, your own manufacturing process, but then there's a step in it where you send the material out to some place else that specializes in performing a particular operation, then you bring it back and continue the process. So that kind of outside processing step management. You may want to have some logic around which supplier you want to route those goods to for outside, or those assemblies to, or those that for outside processing. What we now have is a way where you can programmatically say how you want to determine who the supplier should be, and then that supplier will get populated into the outside processing requisition. Another case where we've improved the technology that affects user interface, we basically last year in 2023, we rebuilt the mobile applications using this Oracle Jet technology, the more modern technology, to move away from what we call mobile application framework. So we already had released that last year, and we moved the field service, the maintenance, the mobile supply chain apps to this new technical approach. We moved all the smartphone apps that we're continuing with to that. In the maintenance area in particular, though, we've made some additional enhancements in 12.2.14. We've added a personalization framework so you can hide and show specific fields in this mobile application that may hide the things that may not be relevant to your business, and continue to adopt what we call the Redwood look and feel. It's kind of our corporate standard look and feel. It looks like the Fusion applications. So those are things we added to the mobile app in maintenance area in 12.2.14. In the service contracts area, we've in recent releases, the new innovation has really been around usage-based billing. You want to bill based on some kind of meter reading that you're taking of how much equipment's been used, how long it's been run, how many copies it made, or whatever it might be. And the issue here, that the enhancement that we have, is that you can now price the usage transactions based on the billing period date rather than the service contract date. So if you are, for example, revising your price list, you're sort of changing your pricing multiple times during a year, you want to make sure that the latest price list that is appropriate at the time you do the billing is the one that you're billing off of, not the one that was in place at the time when you established the service contract. So that's something that many customers asked for, and we've now delivered in 12.2.14. Again, as usual, many additional enhancement requests in this area as well. I'll give you an example of one of them. If your product offerings have a standard warranty, and then after that an extended warranty kicks in where there's just more time that somebody could buy on the warranty, that's already fully supported. What is new is you may have an extended warranty that not only lasts longer, but actually is better than your standard warranty. So if it covers more things or has certain better pricing associated with it or something like that, you may in effect want to start the extended warranty period at the same time you start the standard warranty, namely when the goods are shipped, as opposed to starting it at the end of the standard warranty period. So we now support letting you start the extended warranties at the same time when the goods are shipped, as opposed to at the end of the standard warranty period. In the HCM area, we've another example where we've used our modern user interface technology, or JET technology, to replace a different way we had built a highly interactive interface. So in the succession planning area, where you're looking at different skills and you're mapping candidates against a spider chart of competencies, We've now replaced the version of that we had built before with the ADF technology with, again, this JET technology. So again, bringing this within the envelope of standard EBS technologies. In addition, in the HR area, although it affects other areas beyond HR, we added more support within the approvals management engine for how it handles timeout processing with surrogate approvers, meaning that if you go, let's say, up the HR hierarchy and you find that a certain approver just doesn't take action in a certain period of time, might want to set the system up where if that person doesn't take action, the approval is redirected to somebody who's going to be able to be a surrogate for that. Maybe you skip that person and go to their manager, or maybe you have some other approver who can, step in and handle such cases. So it lets you configure that easily within the AME engine. And again, in addition, many more enhancement requests. Just to give an example of one, a mass update for personal payment methods. So maybe you have seasonal workers who are coming onto your payroll for a holiday period, and for whatever reason, rather than giving them all individually self-service access to your system to set up their direct deposit information, maybe you've gathered that somewhere else and you just want to interface that into the system. You've got a spreadsheet of that information, you just want to upload it. We now support doing that through a web ADI integrator that we have to do mass updates of personal payment information. Now, across all of eBusiness Suite, we get many requests to add APIs. And some of these are transaction APIs where you actually want to communicate attributes or a full business document. And other cases, you want to actually communicate from another system or synchronize reference data information that you're going to be using. Things like the definitions of the bill of materials or definitions about what the sub-inventories are and the inventory, or whatever the configuration kind of information might be. In many cases, EBS is the source of truth of this system, and there's other subscribing systems that need to be advised if there's any update to that occurs within EBS. So this chart is really to show you that we have done a lot of work over the course of 12.2, adding more and more APIs, both reference data and transactional to the system. The ones that are in brown here are the ones that we added in 12.2.14. Again, just to give you a sense that APIs are always part of our development strategy and are always popular enhancements. So we've talked a bit about the user experience of bringing a number of components into the JET technology stack and basically rewriting those in a way that's more standard HTML and eliminating some use of other technologies inside eBusiness Suite. In addition to that, we have done work to integrate other tools that people use for extensions into the EBS environment. So one of the most popular is Apex. So we've already had a document that explains how you can build a custom application with Apex that references the EBS data, build your own screen with the Apex tool, and then kind of integrate that with EBS. We've added more to that in the 12.2.14 timeframe here, which is to now provide a function that you can set up in the EBS security system. In fact, you can set up your Apex page to either be external, or the new function is to say that you can be embedded. So I'll show you an example of that in the meantime, so that you can assign your Apex pages to EBS menus, and that certain users can get access to them. Basically, they fit into the security model of EBS where you administer who can do what in the system. We support single sign-on across your custom Apex app and the EBS screen. And what this really lets you do is build a custom Apex page and effectively embed it in a region of an OA framework page. So from the end user's point of view, they still have what looks like a normal OA framework page with what we call the global menu at the top, where you have your home button and your switch user control and various other things. And all of that's still there, even though this is your custom page that Oracle never knew anything about. you can just put your Apex-based content into this page, and then the users will experience that as being like a much more normal and integrated part of their EBS experience than they would if they had to like fully navigate away from the OA framework user interface and go to a user interface that looked quite a bit different, which is the behavior before if you don't do this. So we know Apex is very popular. We're very happy to support people trying to use Apex to extend eBusiness Suite, and so this is what we've delivered in 12.2.14 for that purpose. Another thing that's in the same spirit is Oracle Guided Learning, and this is Oracle's tool for basically context-dependent user interface procedure support or just-in-time training or education type support. So the idea here is that you can build out, we are not delivering content for this, but you could build out your own content. So let's suppose your user is in the context of looking at purchase requisitions, and they want to know what your policies are for some aspect of purchasing management. And they can, from here, invoke a Oracle Guided Learning, and Oracle Guided Learning will pass the context of this page. EBS will pass the context of this page to the Guided Learning, and it will then navigate to the relevant part of the content that you created so that the user can then see either just information or a whole training process, whatever you've put there to help them navigate through the system and enforce your policies correctly. I should point out the guided learning is applicable to the context-sensitive guided learning is applicable to the HTML parts of the system, not to the forms parts of the system. You can still get to guided learning sort of at a table of contents level from anywhere in the system, but the context-sensitive part is applicable to HTML. One administrative feature that is important because we're seeing a lot more adoption of the enterprise command centers now, and so we've built out some administrative facilities to help people be successful with that. Back in the 12.2.10 timeframe, several years ago now, we built out an activity dashboard. You can basically see how much activity there was navigating through and using the different command centers. We then added earlier this year, April of this year, we added another administrative dashboard to monitor EBS data sets. So you see how big the data sets are that are growing. Sometimes people configure things in a way where their data set is going to blow out the memory of the machine they have it on. This helps you understand the sizing of the data sets you've created. And then the final one is brand new in 12.2.14, and that is to track the processing of the loads that happen into the ETLs that happen to populate the in-memory storage that's behind ECC. So the performance of those load operate, how long is the full load taking, how long is the incremental load taking, and so forth. You now have administrative visibility into that. So with that, let me just pivot to tell you about some places you can go for more information. Our homepage, oracle.com/EBS, is sort of the starting point for where to get information about the product line. Oracle.com/EBS-resources takes you straight to a page that is full of links to very useful, kind of all the core starting point information you might want. Specifically, since this is about like what is new in this release, if you're on an earlier release level and you're trying to figure out what is the overall value of getting to 12.2.14 from, let's say, 12.2.9, what you would do in each area is go to what we call the release content document. So we're showing a sample of the order management one here, where you could see here's what was added in 12.2.11, what was added in 12.2.12, 12.2.13, 12.2.14, and so forth. And that way you can, a functional expert in this area has a convenient way to look down the entire list of things that have been added, hence therefore search for things that might just be useful to the organization or might allow you to replace customization or custom reporting or whatever it is to basically help identify the value that you would get by moving to this later release level. Now we have a document on the oracle.com site that is a document that lists all these release content documents, which are currently stored on MOS on the MyOracle support site. There's a link in from this document to the MyOracle support document, and also direct links from that PDF file to the individual release content documents in a particular area you might be interested in. So to get to the actual document, you'll need a MOS login, but this is a way to help get to the right place conveniently without having to navigate around within the support system. And finally, we have tutorial type material to help you implement and use these features that we've rolled out. It's called the TOI training, and there is a website, an Oracle University website, which the link is here, the EBS-TOI website, that will take you to an interface where you can find training on any particular features that have been mentioned that you might want to implement or learn more about the details of implementing and using those. So with that, I'll wrap up. I hope you find 12.2.14 a valuable release. And until next time, this is Cliff Godwin, and thank you for joining us.